Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Mark, a trainer here at WEX Field Service Management, and today we are covering QuickBooks Sync. This webinar will cover what is QuickBooks Sync, one-way sync items versus two-way sync items, the difference between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop, how to use the QuickBooks Sync tool, and then we'll go over customers, invoices, and payment sync, some back office settings for you to check out, where you can find other sync training items, and just some final best practices for syncing. We'll do a live Q&A at the end where you can get your questions answered live on stream. And without further ado, let's start with our first topic, which is, what is QuickBooks Sync? WEX FSM integrates with QuickBooks and allows you to sync data like your customers, your invoices, and payments. This will eliminate the need for double entry, so you don't have to enter into both systems. You'll enter into WEX FSM first, and then those items will sync down to your QuickBooks. Now, there are two different types of QuickBooks. There's QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. And within the items you're syncing, there are two different kinds of syncs. There's a one-way sync and a two-way sync. So what is the difference between one-way sync items and two-way sync items? One-way sync is only going to sync from WEX FSM to QuickBooks. And those are items like your customers, your invoices, and your payments. If, talking about a timeline here, if you were using a different software, maybe you were just using QuickBooks before getting WEX FSM, then you would be creating your customers' invoices, taking payments into that system. When you sign up for WEX FSM, you are in an onboarding period and you would still enter those into your previous software until your make the switch date. Once you make the switch and start using WEX FSM as your main software, that is when the one-way sync will start. You will enter your customers' invoices and payments into WEX FSM first, and those will sync down to your QuickBooks. If after the make the switch date, you enter customers' invoices or payments into your previous software or into QuickBooks, they will not sync up to WEX FSM. One-way sync is a one-way sync from WEX FSM to QuickBooks. Two-way sync items are, they sync both ways. So those are like your chart of accounts, your tax information, your QuickBooks item list. We will dive into the system and I'll show you exactly where you can find all of these items and which sync category they fall into. But just to give you a foundation and understanding of the two different sync items, one-way sync and two-way sync. Now, we also have two different versions of QuickBooks. There's QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. For syncing to QuickBooks Desktop, it does require a sync tool. That is a tool that you will download to your computer. It will connect to your QuickBooks and then allow WEX FSM and your QuickBooks to communicate, which is how the sync will happen. If you are using QuickBooks Desktop, you will need to install that sync tool before you make the switch. That way, that tool is there. When you go to sync, the tool will be ready. To do this, you will go to the little smiley face guy in the bottom right of your screen to the Help Center. Go to Tasks, and then you will click the link under the QuickBooks Sync Training to schedule your install. To prepare for a sync tool install, you need your admin username and password and be on the computer that has your main QuickBooks desktop file. If you're using a server, you just need to let your representative know and it'll be a Zoom call just like this. The customer support rep will install everything for you and teach you how to use the tool. Once you have the tool downloaded, it will look something like this. You will be able to set your sync statuses to every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, every 60 minutes, or once per day. And then once you have made the switch, the sync is turned on, it will just sync automatically to the auto sync that you set. A benefit of the sync tool is that you can manually sync. So if you wanted to turn auto sync off and just sync manually whenever you want, you can do that. You will just turn auto sync off and use the sync button only. Now, QuickBooks Online is different. It is a different situation than QuickBooks Desktop. So with QuickBooks Online, that does not require a sync tool. Everything is cloud-based. And when you signed up, you would have provided your QuickBooks Online login info. That is what we need to pull your data for your data loads. And then it syncs every 10 minutes on the 10s, 24 hours a day. There's no manual sync, so it will just auto sync, but it's syncing every 10 minutes when you enter information like add a customer, take a payment, create an invoice, those will sync every 10 minutes. As a quick sort of disclaimer and a little more nuance to that sync, there is 31 items. There's a soft cap of 31 items when syncing. Now, you most likely will not feel this. It will not make a difference to you. If you're adding 31 customers every 10 minutes, then business is a booming, but most likely that's not happening at that rate. However, if you make a couple invoices that have more than 31 items on them, you will notice when that syncs, it's not going to sync absolutely everything. In the 10 minutes, it will sync 31 items. If you notice that something isn't syncing, wait 10 more minutes and it should go in the next batch. So essentially, you're batching your sync with a 31 item soft cap. And I say soft cap, if you have an invoice that has 32 items on it, it will still sync all of that. But just know that is a detail. You most likely won't even notice it, but I do like to point that out when we're talking about QuickBooks Online. Biggest differences between the two, QuickBooks Desktop does require the sync tool in order to sync, but it allows manual syncing through that tool. QuickBooks Online, there's no sync tool required. It all syncs through the cloud, but there's no manual sync option. It's auto sync only. And now we want to go into WEX FSM and we're going to take a look at, so you can get a visual idea of these items and where to find them. We'll look at one-way sync items and how you can check the sync status for customers, invoices, and payments. And then we will look at your two-way sync items, your classes, your income accounts, tax groups, payment terms, and QuickBooks item list. Let's go ahead and dive into WEX FSM. So we are going to start with one-way sync items. These are items you will enter into WEX FSM first, and those will sync down to your QuickBooks. First place we're going to is in the main navigation in the top left, and we'll click on Customers. This is your customer list. And when I want to add a customer, I can click the red plus button here in the top right, enter that customer information. Oh, I got logged out. Enter that customer information and click Save. That will save into your customer list. And then that will sync down to your QuickBooks, creating a customer in your QuickBooks. The auto sync status, if you see right here, there's a bunch of green rectangles. This is where you can check the sync status. So if you add a customer and you see that it is in ready status, that means it is ready to sync and will sync on the next sync if your QuickBooks Online, the next 10 minutes. And after it has synced, this status will go to synced, and you'll see in WEX FSM that the status is synced. You should be able to see that in your QuickBooks. So that's customers. Next, let's go to the invoice list for invoices. We'll go to jobs, invoice list. And the invoice list is exactly what it sounds like. It's a big list of all invoices in your system. And as it relates to syncing, when I create an invoice, it has to have line items on it. Those line items, you will be able to say where you want those to sync, and that is set up in your price book. If a invoice is created and you do not add line items, then you may see a not ready status. So when I create an invoice, I add line items. Those will sync. They'll be in a ready status first. If you're using QuickBooks Online, it'll sync every 10 minutes, and then it will create that invoice in your QuickBooks. No double entry needed. You'll just see a one-to-one copy of that invoice in your system. And if you make changes or make an update or take a payment on that invoice, it will also sync that information down to QuickBooks, and you'll see that in both places. But let's see what happens if something's not ready. So I'm going to go to my auto sync status and choose not ready. Any of these invoices that have a not ready sync status will show up. And not ready can mean a lot of things. Usually that means something is missing to know where you want this thing to sync or this item. So let's take a look. Number one, this is $0 invoice amount. That means there's no line items. And this one you don't have to worry about. Once you add line items to this, this will just automatically go into a ready state and sync. But this does have a total, so we know that there are items on this. Click on the word details in red and you can troubleshoot what this wants. It'll tell you, so right here it says a tax group is required. So we just need to select the tax group and click save. And there we go. So most likely, this will not be happening a lot when you're creating your invoices. You're adding items from your price book. Those will already have the invoice accounts, or sorry, the income accounts. It will also know where taxes are coming from based on the zip code. But if for any reason there is a piece of information missing, you can troubleshoot very easily from here just by clicking, reading what it wants, tell it what it wants, and then it will sync. Okay, so that is the invoice list. Next, let's look at payments, another one-way sync item. Let's go to jobs, payment list. Another big list of all your payments in your system, and the same rules apply. You have your auto sync status. Once you take a payment in your system, it does need to settle before that will sync over and be paid out and recorded in your QuickBooks. And same thing, you see your auto sync status is here, and you can troubleshoot from here. If you click this red arrow, it will give you more information about the payment and show you the invoice that it was connected to. You can also click the three dots here to edit the payment, change the customer, refund the payment, which will be refunded in the form it was provided, or delete the payment in case you recorded this in error. Okay. And so those were our one-way sync items. That's where you can find your customers, your invoices, and your payments, and view the sync statuses of all. Next, we're going to transition to talking about two-way sync items. Now, these will sync no matter which system you update or add them from. Let's go to Settings, Accounting and Taxes. Everything on this page is a two-way sync item. Now at the top, it will tell you which which QuickBooks version you have. This test account I'm using is a QuickBooks desktop account. This will also show you your classes, chart of accounts, tax settings, and tax groups. Everything you see here is pulled from your QuickBooks. Or, if you were syncing from a different software, like we're loading these, we're syncing these, and this is going to be a one-to-one copy of what you would see in your QuickBooks. And you can see the sync statuses. So we can see that all of these are synced. And you can edit or update these in QuickBooks. So if you update your chart of accounts, if you add new liability accounts, whatever it is, you will be able to see that reflected here. You can also click the red plus button to add chart of accounts here from the WEX FSM side, and you can delete them from here as well, and it'll sync and update in both places. Quick tip or just note about taxes. If you have taxes turned on, an auto lookup tax rate through zip tax turned off, then all of the tax groups will be exactly what's in your QuickBooks. For those who have been using QuickBooks for many, many years, they prefer this. They just like, don't touch my taxes. I just want my tax groups that I've always had. And that's great. Maybe if you have a newer QuickBooks, or you just would like more options of different zones through zip codes, you can turn on auto lookup tax rate through zip tax, and that will add tax groups into your system, giving you a bigger variety than what you may already have in your system. In order to do this, if you do want to turn on zip tax, that is a request you would send in to customer care. You just click on the smiley face guy and contact support. Just let them know, hey, I would like to have more tax groups added. Please turn on zip tax. There is no additional charge for that. That is available as part of your subscription. It's just a personal preference. All right, so that's accounting and taxes. Next, let's take a look at payment terms, another two-way sync item. So we're going to go to settings, jobs, payment terms. From here, you will be able to see your payment terms. So between you and your customer, when you do a job for them, how long do they have to pay? These will be pulled from your QuickBooks and it's a two-way sync item. So I can add payment terms here and then they will add to my QuickBooks and vice versa. If I add payment terms in QuickBooks, those will sync up to here. You can see your sync statuses, and you can also set what you want your default payment terms to be. If I'm doing a lot of single family home residential, kind of one and done jobs, due on receipt is great. If I do more commercial work, maybe I want to set my default to a net 30, and you simply click on it and make these payment terms default and click save. Next, let's look at the QuickBooks item list. So just backing up here a little bit. When you're on an invoice, so whether, however you are creating an invoice, there's a couple different ways you can in the system. Get yourself to an invoice. Now we're on an invoice. If I want to access my price book, I will click Add Item. That will allow me to then see the tab for my QuickBooks item list. Now, the QuickBooks item list would have been a list of items and pricing that you had in your QuickBooks already. When that syncs, it will sync into your system, and then you can search through here. Maybe I need a coil. That will pull up. Any term that you type will pull up your QuickBooks item list, And then let's say I want this coil replacement, and then we'll add the item. And there you go. Now, I will say this for the QuickBooks item list, this is the only place you can access this. For your integrated WEX FSM price book, that has folders you can create and organize them. And, there's a lot of details that you can add. For your QuickBooks item list, if you want to edit or update these items, you will need to do that in QuickBooks first, and that will sync up to WEX FSM. All right. The last thing we're going to go over is where you can find more sync training and just some best practices. So I'm going to go back to the schedule page. So we covered a lot today. If you are needing to remember, like, where can I go to check those sync statuses? I can't think of it off the top of my head. Go to the Help Center, this little smiley face guy. And then right here under Tasks, this will have your QuickBooks Sync Training. And you can click here. This will teach you about sync. And then if you want to see where those sync statuses are, you can go to the daily to-dos. Daily to-dos, if you scroll to the bottom, has the sync hub. And this has links to the invoice list, the customer list, and the payment list. All three we looked at together today. And these are where you can check the sync statuses of these items. For example, if you create an invoice and then a couple days later, you're in your QuickBooks looking for that invoice, you're not sure where it is, you can go to the invoice list, type in the invoice number or job number, and be able to pull that up and check the sync status, 15548. And then you can troubleshoot from there if that's required. You can also go to the Help Center and go down to video courses and webinars. And from here, this is where you can see the webinar replay. So if you want to watch a replay of today's session, that would be in the past webinars section. QuickBooks Sync Training right here. Okay. That is all the information we have for today's presentation. I hope that you learned something. We're going to move to our Q&A now, so get your questions ready. But before we do, I just want to say thank you so much for joining. My name is Mark with WEX Field Service Management, and this has been QuickBooks Sync Training.